Unbound. Narcissists who manipulate via helpfulness. Unbound. Narcissists who manipulate via helpfulness, the trap wrapped in kindness, they never show up as villains. They show up as rescuers. While you're drowning in chaos, pain, or just simple need, they're right there, hand extended, with that soft smile and a well-timed favor. It looks like love. It smells like support, but underneath, it's strategy. These are not good deeds from a good heart. These are calculated moves by a narcissist who doesn't raise their voice, they raise your dependence. You don't see the trap at first because it's wrapped in beautiful packaging. You're in a tough spot and they offer their time, their money, their shoulder, and you, being human, being grateful, accept. But that's when the shift begins. Suddenly you're not just being helped, you're being owned. Every favor is followed by a reminder. Every gift has strings invisible to the eye but heavy on the soul. What they want isn't to lift you up, it's to plant a flag in your life, to say, I was here first. And once that flag is in the ground, they start building their ego with every kind thing they've ever done for you. It becomes a fortress, and you're locked inside, held hostage by your own gratitude. And if you dare to leave, you're made to feel like a traitor, like you're betraying kindness. That's not help. That's control dressed in compassion. They don't shout, they don't threaten, but they do keep a ledger. You'll see it in their eyes when you say no. You'll hear it in their tone when you pull back. After everything I've done for you, that phrase alone is a red flag that someone's love was actually just leverage. They didn't want you to be free. They wanted you to owe them, and now the debt collector has arrived. The worst part, you feel guilty. You feel like maybe you're the problem. You look back at all the times they helped and think, how can I turn away now? That's the genius of their manipulation. They don't need to force you, they train you to chain yourself. They've conditioned you to equate distance with betrayal, boundaries with coldness, independence with cruelty. But let me say this loud. Real help never makes you feel like you're being watched, weighed, or warned. Real support empowers you, it doesn't enslave you. And if you've got someone in your life who's keeping track, always reminding you of how much they've been there for you, then you've got someone who was never truly helping, they were positioning. You didn't sign a contract, but they act like you did. You never agreed to be emotionally indebted, but now they act like you owe your loyalty, your choices, your life. This is how manipulative narcissists operate, not through violence or obvious harm, but through subtle, soft invasion. They get in close, they get you to drop your guard, and then they rewrite the rules without telling you. They'll take every opportunity to remind you that they're the reason you're okay, that if it weren't for them, you'd still be struggling. And maybe you were down when they showed up, but what they don't want you to realize is this: you were always going to get up. You had what it took all along. They just got there first and made you forget that you're powerful without them. You're not ungrateful for questioning their intentions. You're not heartless for noticing the control under the care. You're not bad for pulling away. That's not betrayal, that's awakening. That's reclaiming. That's finally opening your eyes to the fact that their so-called generosity was really just a long game for control. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. You start to notice how every act of kindness had a purpose beyond kindness. How their timing was always perfect, but only when it made them look like a hero. You start to realize how much of your freedom was traded away without you even noticing. Because kindness, when weaponized, becomes the most dangerous manipulation of all. This is the part where most people retreat. They go back into the cave of obligation, of fear, of silence, because stepping away from someone who's been there for you feels wrong. But listen, you can honor what they did without surrendering your autonomy. You can appreciate the moment they helped and still walk away from the pattern they created. You are allowed to say, thank you for the help, but I don't owe you my life. You are allowed to say, I see the strings now, and I'm cutting them. That's not cold. That's not cruel. That's courage. That's clarity. That's the first step in becoming unbound. And you better believe they'll protest. They'll remind you, guilt you, try to drag you back into the web. But every time you resist, you're sending a message not just to them, but to your soul. And the message is this: I am free, free to say no, free to walk away, free to define what help means and what it doesn't. Because once you see that kindness was never the goal, control was, you'll never again be fooled by a smile that hides a snare. You deserve love that liberates, not love that dominates. You deserve support that strengthens, not support that suffocates. And now that you know the game is over. You are no longer fooled by the trap wrapped in kindness. You see it, you name it, and now you rise from it completely, fully, and forever. Unbound. The currency of control. Control isn't always loud. It doesn't always wear the face of a dictator. Sometimes control shows up like a friend who's just looking out for you. It wears the mask of care, cloaking domination in the language of concern. Narcissists who manipulate through helpfulness don't bark. Commands they buy compliance, and the currency they use, favors, sacrifices. Selflessness, but it's not selfless if it comes with a bill. They act like they're investing in you, but what they're really doing is buying real estate in your mind. Every ride they give, every errand they run, every problem they solve, it's all recorded in a mental ledger. And every time you express a boundary or speak your truth, they flip that ledger open and say, "Look what I've done for you." That's not love, that's accounting. Real support doesn't need reminders. Real love doesn't invoice your soul. But this kind of narcissist thrives off keeping you emotionally indebted. Why? Because as long as you feel like you owe them, they never have to ask for permission. They already own the space, and you'll hesitate before reclaiming it because you're afraid it'll make you ungrateful. You start to notice how every favor is followed by an expectation. You didn't ask them to do it, but somehow you're the one who has to pay the emotional toll. It's never spoken directly. They're too calculated for that. Instead, it comes through guilt, passive aggression, or withdrawal of affection. They don't yell, they withhold, and that silence, it's louder than any scream. This is how they establish dominance, not through brute force, but through emotional economics. They create a false sense of debt, then collect interest every time you try to breathe without them. Suddenly, your joy costs you, your freedom costs you, your independence costs you, and worst of all, you begin to believe that the cost is fair. Let me tell you something with absolute certainty. You don't owe anyone your peace just because they played the part of a savior. That's not a deal, that's a manipulation. And it's time you stop paying for a life that was never meant to be mortgaged out to someone else's ego. These narcissists treat relationships like stock markets, always calculating the return on investment. If they help you, they want praise. If they support you, they expect obedience. And if they sacrifice for you, they want ownership. That's not generosity. That's a hostile takeover, and your soul is not up for sale. The moment you start pushing back, they'll act betrayed. They'll twist the narrative. After all I've done for you, this is how you treat me. It's emotional extortion. They're not interested in being kind, they're interested in being kings and queens in a kingdom of silent, grateful subjects. But here's the truth. Real help doesn't shrink you, it expands you. Real love doesn't demand, it empowers. And any relationship where kindness is used as currency is not a relationship, it's a contract with invisible ink. And the moment you stop signing it, they call you the villain. You need to break that contract. Tear it up, burn it, because the longer you stay in it, the more it costs you, not in dollars, but in dignity. And once they've trained you to confuse guilt with gratitude, you become their puppet. Every string they pull feels like a reminder of your debt. And so you dance to avoid the shame. But you're not a puppet, you're a person. And the day you realize that you've been manipulated through kindness is the day you begin to step into your true power. Because now you know the game. Now you see the currency. And once you see the value system, you can choose to stop participating in it. You can say, I appreciate what was done. I acknowledge the help. But I will no longer be emotionally leveraged. I will no longer pay with my time, my choices, or my identity. That's not selfish. That's sacred. That's the beginning of spiritual and psychological freedom. The more you disconnect from the emotional economy they've created, the more they panic, because control doesn't survive in clarity. Manipulation doesn't survive in awareness, and when you become aware of the currency, the hidden trades happening behind their help, you start to see your worth outside of what they've given. You start to understand that true value doesn't need to be bought. That your autonomy, your voice, your direction in life is not a bargaining chip. It's a birthright, and you never need to trade it away just to make someone else feel powerful. So stop calculating what you owe, burn the ledger, cancel the debt. You don't need to live a life chained to the counterfeit generosity of someone who only helped to hold you. You're not currency, you're a sovereign soul, and once you stop playing their game, they lose their grip. They can't collect on what you never agreed to. They can't control a mind that's no longer afraid of being ungrateful. That's when the chain breaks. That's when you finally breathe again. That's when you declare with your life, your choices, your energy, I am unbound. The smiling saboteur expanded, you've seen them. They wear the biggest smiles, speak the softest words, and always seem to be in the right place at the right time to help. But behind that polished kindness lies something far more sinister: sabotage. These narcissists don't destroy your life with knives. They do it with compliments, concern, and calculated care. They don't fight you openly, they guide you into failure while making it look like support. This smiling saboteur is a master of disguise. Their weapon of choice isn't conflict, it's confusion. They dress up control in compassion, making you doubt your own intuition every time it tells you something's off. You feel it in your gut, but your mind struggles to justify it because their actions look helpful. They're not yelling, they're not judging, they're just being nice. That's how they get you. They undermine you slowly. Gently, persistently, they'll offer advice that sounds caring but clips your wings. Are you sure you're ready for that promotion? I just don't want you to get overwhelmed. I don't think he's right for you. You deserve someone better. You should probably stay where it's safe. It's risky to take that leap. Sounds supportive, right, but each word is a drop of poison meant to shrink your confidence and inflate their control. This sabotage is rarely obvious. That's why it's so dangerous. It's disguised as wisdom, as loyalty, as protection. But what it's really doing is putting you in a cage built from caring. And the bars are invisible because they're made of your own trust. They want you to believe that you can't make it without them, that your best decisions are the ones they approve, that your independence is a liability. Here's the twisted part. They actually need you to succeed. A little, not too much, just enough that you're grateful, but not enough that you outgrow them. They want you to taste achievement, but only if they can take credit for it. So they position themselves as the source of your success, and when you try to fly higher without them, suddenly they're the ones warning you of the dangers. The smiling saboteur doesn't push you down. They pull you back. Just as you're about to leap, they remind you of the fall. Just as you start to believe in yourself, they give you reasons to hesitate. And they do it all with the same smile, the same gentle tone that made you trust them in the first place. It's not kindness, it's strategy. You have to understand this. Not all sabotage screams, some of it whispers, and those whispers echo louder in your soul because they come from someone you trusted. The danger isn't in what they say, it's in how often they say it. Because over time, their doubts become your doubts. Their fears become your reality, and you start to question everything you once knew about your own strength. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. Their smiles are a smokescreen. Their concern is a leash, and every time you defer your decisions to them, you surrender a piece of your destiny. They don't want you to see how powerful you are, because the moment you do, the moment you take full ownership of your vision, they lose the very leverage they used to hold you. You were never meant to live on the sidelines of your own life, waiting for approval from someone who's only clapping when you stay small. You were meant to soar even if it makes others uncomfortable. especially if it makes a narcissist uncomfortable. Because your discomfort was never their concern, it was their currency. You can no longer let kindness be the camouflage for control. You have to look deeper beyond the smile, beyond the soft spoken warnings, beyond the gentle sabotage. Ask yourself, who benefits from me staying where I am? Who profits from my hesitation? Who's comfortable with me doubting myself? The answer will expose the saboteur. You've got to rip the mask off with clarity, not with confrontation, with confidence. You don't need to fight them, you need to outgrow them. The most powerful thing you can do is trust your own voice again. Make the move, take the leap, speak your truth. Even when it contradicts their advice. Especially when it contradicts their advice. Because here's the thing, true allies cheer you on when you outpace them. True supporters don't need credit for your rise. They celebrate your strength because it inspires theirs. But the smiling saboteur, they only clap as long as you don't leave the stage they built. And the moment you try, they'll use their smile as a noose. But you don't have to hang from their expectations anymore. You can step off that stage and build your own. A stage where you're not controlled by fake concern or hidden fear. A stage where you rise on your own terms. A stage where you smile back not out of submission, but out of sovereignty. And when they see you thriving without them, flying higher than their warnings ever allowed, that's when you'll know their sabotage couldn't stop your destiny. Their smile couldn't mask your purpose, and their grip, no matter how gentle, was never strong enough to bind the fire in you, because you were never meant to stay grounded. You were born to soar, and now, finally, you are unbound. When help becomes a hook expanded at first, it feels like a lifeline. Someone stepping into your chaos with calm, into your pain with solutions, into your confusion with clarity. You're grateful. You open up. You let them in. But what you don't realize not yet is that what looks like help is actually a hook. And once you bite down on it, they start reeling you in, not to rescue you, but to own you. Narcissists who use helpfulness as manipulation don't help to lift you. They help to label you. They make their assistance seem like generosity, but it's really a strategy to build a psychological debt, one you'll never finish paying. Every favor comes with invisible fine print. Every gesture of kindness is a deposit in their ego bank, and sooner or later, they're going to come to collect. They don't offer help to empower you, they offer it to position themselves as essential. You couldn't have done this without me. I was the one who was there when no one else was. Remember who got you through that. They keep receipts. They track favors like trophies, and they'll hang every one of them over your head if you ever start pulling away. This is how they build dependency, not with control, but with comfort. Not with demands, but with devotion. They lull you into a state where your wins are tied to their validation, your confidence is tied to their approval, and your future feels unsafe without their presence. They make themselves the middleman between you and your destiny, and the moment you try to bypass them, they make sure you feel the cold. It's not help, it's a hook, a psychological tether, and they bait it with your vulnerability. They look for your wounds, your needs, your missing pieces, and they rush to fill them, not out of love, but out of leverage. They insert themselves into the gaps of your life so they can become the glue that holds it together, then threaten to pull away if you stop playing by their rules. They may never say it outright, but the message is clear. You owe me, not just your gratitude, but your loyalty, your silence, your submission. They want you to remember every time they saved you so that you never feel safe walking alone again. They manufacture codependence and call it care. But here's what they fear, that you'll wake up one day and realize you were never broken, that the help they gave was never about healing you, it was about hooking you, that their generosity had strings so long and so tangled, they choked your autonomy. And once you see that, once you start cutting those strings, their power begins to die. They'll panic. They'll remind you of everything they've done for you. They'll replay the greatest hits of their heroism. They'll try to trigger guilt, shame, confusion, anything to stop you from walking away. Because without your dependency, their identity crumbles. Without your need, their narrative falls apart. And without your gratitude, their manipulation has no fuel. You've got to recognize the pattern before it hardens into a prison. Every time you feel indebted for something that should have been freely given, take a step back. Every time help comes with conditions, questions, or control, pause. Because real help doesn't require repayment. Real love doesn't keep score. Real support doesn't have strings. You are allowed to say thank you and still walk away. You are allowed to appreciate what someone did for you and still refuse to let it define the rest of your life. You don't owe permanent loyalty for temporary help, especially not to someone who weaponized your weakness to make themselves feel strong. If you're constantly feeling like you owe them your voice, your choices, your peace, that's not help. That's a hook, and the longer you stay on it, the harder it becomes to remember what freedom feels like. But the moment you call it out, the moment you pull that hook out of your soul and say, enough, the spell breaks. You don't need to repay manipulation with more compliance. You don't need to balance the emotional scales they rigged from the start. You need to get your power back, rebuild your confidence, reclaim your decisions, stand in your truth even if they say you're ungrateful, even if they play the victim, even if they try to guilt you into silence. Because guess what? You are not a project. You are not someone's charity case. You are not here to be kept in a cage of favors and false kindness. You are not a puppet for their performance of helpfulness. You are a powerful, intuitive, unstoppable human being, and you don't need a narcissist's help to become whole. You just need your own permission to walk away. When help becomes a hook, it's not help anymore, it's a trap. But once you see it for what it is, once you cut that line and swim free, you'll realize the only thing holding you down was the belief that you couldn't rise without them. But you can, you will, and when you do, you'll be completely, irrevocably unbound. The debt that was never yours to carry expanded. There's a kind of debt that doesn't show up on credit reports. It's not financial, it's emotional, psychological, invisible, and yet it can feel heavier than a mountain. You're not even sure how it started. One day you were being helped, and the next, you were trapped in a cycle of owing someone your silence, your time, your loyalty, even your identity. This is the narcissist's illusion of generosity. They give just enough to convince you the rest of your life must be spent repaying them. They don't hand you help, they hand you a contract, unspoken, unwritten but ironclad in their mind. Every time they did something for you, picked you up when you were down, listened when you were hurting, provided when you were struggling, they stamped a mental invoice. You owe me, and they carry those invoices like weapons, like chains. They'll smile while reminding you of your debt. After all I've done for you, don't forget who was there when no one else was. I sacrificed so much for you. They'll play the savior card so often. You start believing the only reason you're okay is because they stepped in. But the truth is, what they gave you was never clean. It was never free. It was help dressed in obligation. And slowly you start measuring your freedom against the weight of what you owe. You second guess your decisions because you don't want to seem ungrateful. You stop saying no because you feel guilty. You avoid conflict because they remind you of everything they did for you. But this isn't gratitude, it's bondage, and this isn't love, it's manipulation. Here's the truth they never want you to realize. You never owed them anything. Not your silence, not your submission, not your guilt, because true help is not a transaction. It's not leverage. It's not bait for future control. And if someone is keeping score, if they're using their past kindness to hold you hostage, it was never kindness at all, it was currency. You see, narcissists don't give, they invest, and you are the asset. Your validation, your dependence, your worship. They expect interest on their emotional investments. They expect you to pay it back in silence, in self-sacrifice, in soul erosion. And if you miss a payment, if you speak up, pull back, draw a boundary, they come collecting with a vengeance. But the debt, that's the lie, it's the spell. It's the phantom burden they use to keep you small. Because if they can convince you that you owe them, they can control you. They can manipulate your decisions, shame your boundaries, distort your reality. They can make you feel like a villain for wanting to breathe without their permission. Let me say it again, you owe them nothing. Not because you're ungrateful, but because true gratitude doesn't come with guilt. True love doesn't ask you to carry shame, and true giving doesn't demand submission. The moment someone helps you and then expects you to surrender your soul as payment, that help becomes a trap. You have to break the false agreement, tear up the invisible contract, step out of the psychological debtor's prison they built. You're not on this earth to repay emotional blackmail. You're not here to dance to the tune of someone who gave with conditions. You're here to live, to grow, to thrive, and sometimes that means cutting ties with the people who once held you up just to keep you under. And yes, it's going to be hard, because emotional debt doesn't just disappear. You'll hear their voices in your head. You'll remember the good times, the support, the love. You'll wonder if you're being unfair. But that's the hook trying to dig back in. That's the lie trying to make a comeback. And you have to stand tall and say, I am not bound to a debt that was never mine. Healing means recognizing the trick. It means seeing that what they called love was a leash, that what they called support was a snare, and walking away from that doesn't make you heartless, it makes you whole. Because true healing is about reclaiming your emotional credit, taking back the parts of you they made you feel guilty for owning. So tear off the shackles, burn the scorecards, stop apologizing for your freedom. Because real love doesn't need to be repaid, and real help doesn't require a lifetime of compliance. You are not a prisoner of someone else's past kindness. You are not a tenant in someone else's emotional economy. You are not a debtor in someone else's delusion. You are free. You've always been free. You just needed to remember it. You just needed to hear the truth louder than the guilt. And now that the veil has been lifted, you don't go back. You rise, you walk forward, and you do it with power, unshaken, unchained, unbound. Your freedom is not negotiable. Let this truth thunder through every part of your being. You were never broken for needing help. But you were targeted by someone who weaponized your need to serve their control. They didn't help you out of love. They helped you to tie you down, to bind you to them in invisible chains of guilt, obligation, and fear. And for far too long, you lived in that silent cage, doubting your instincts, questioning your worth, and apologizing for wanting to breathe free. But now you see it, every smile laced with manipulation, every gesture loaded with strings, every favor that came with a leash. You see it clearly, and what you see, you can never unsee. That's where the revolution begins, not in your fists and your awareness. Because awareness is fire, it burns through illusion, it burns through conditioning, and it burns through every lie they sold you. They gave to you not to support you, but to bind you. They wanted you dependent, grateful, silent, forever afraid to walk without their approval. But you weren't born to live in fear. You weren't born to live in someone else's narrative. You were born to rise, to speak, to take up space, and to choose your own damn direction, even if it pisses them off. They want you guilty. You choose freedom. They want you silent. You choose truth. They want you small. You choose power. They want you to keep playing the role of grateful. You decide to play the role of liberated. Because here's the ultimate truth. Real love liberates. It never imprisons. Real help uplifts. It never enslaves. Real kindness is a gift, not a contract. And if someone demands you shrink in return for their generosity, they were never generous. They were greedy with a mask of virtue. You've broken the spell now. You've exposed the game, and once you know the rules, you stop playing. You walk away, not out of hate, but out of love for yourself. Because that's what healing is, not just leaving the toxic, but reclaiming the sacred. Your voice, your choice, your worth. Let this be the line in the sand. You no longer entertain wolves in sheep's clothing. You no longer mistake help for handcuffs. You no longer carry debts that were designed to crush you. From this moment forward, you rise unburdened, you rise untethered, you rise unbound. This isn't the end of your story. This is the rebirth of your power, So now go live it, bold, free, and without apology. Unbound.